I'm excited to announce that Doug Cartwright and Alchemy Sales are launching their third Alchemy Fest. This is going to be the best one yet. I will be there. You will have exclusive access to me, a lot of my trainings, my design work, so that you can dominate in all aspects of life. I focus on the whole person paradigm, and I will help you live your life by design through my framework that you will receive at Alchemy Fest. Join us at Alchemy Festival 2024 from October 4th through the 7th at Camp Navarro in the Redwoods of California. Head over to the link in the description and remember to use code LLBD200 for the special discount that I am offering. Can't wait to see you there. Now, let's all jump into this next episode. Okay, we have Mr. Ricky Williams in the house. Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How you doing nowadays? What are you mainly up to?
Work. work. Yeah. So I teach. Started to learn a little bit of code. I created an app, and I'm always working on something. Yeah.
And what gets Ricky Williams excited today? I mean, you're working a lot, but like, what gets you like stoked when you wake up in the morning and say, I get to do this, if anything?
Everything. And I don't mean that as a cliche. I mean, like, literally, like, everything I do, I wake up happy and enjoy doing. You know, I see this as live life by design. And
Yep.
I think when someone is living life by design, when you wake up, you know, you get to fulfill that design. And so whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe let's elaborate on that. That's exactly the name of the show. And the premise is this. It's a lot of folks wake up in the morning and they kind of let the day own them instead of them owning the day.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really take time to plan out their week, their day,
Mm-hmm.
their life, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be your definition of living life by design? Why don't we start there?
Well, the first question that comes up is whose design? You know, I agree that planning is important, but there's that saying that, you know, man plans and God laughs, you know?
I like that.
And so, yeah, so the question is whose design? Because when I was a kid, I was taught what the design was supposed to be, and I tried my hardest to live up to that design, but it just never felt like it was me. And then when I kind of let go of that, I realized that there is a design out there. I just have to find it and step into it. So, you know, although I was a football player, which is, you know, a very masculine game, I'm pretty chill, you know, and the way I think about it, life happens for us, not to us. And so whatever comes, right, it's just a football mentality, you know. You look at the schedule and you see that each week you have a new opponent, and it doesn't matter, right? You have to be ready to meet that challenge. And I think just playing football for so long, that's just the way I approach life. And on the football team, it's pretty easy because the head coach and the coaching staff, right, they provide the design. And I think a lot of professional athletes, when they leave their sport, there's that big hole of who's going to provide the design.
Got it. I've never even heard that from a player before. That's interesting. So how did you, as soon as you exited, you were in the league 10 years?
I was in the league for a long time, but I played. On the stat book, it says I played 11 seasons, but with injuries and all that stuff, that's about 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I retired twice. First time I retired was in 2004. And at the time, I thought I was done. I thought I was never coming back. And, you know, from the time I can remember being a professional athlete was the design. And so when I walked away, I think I was 27, and I walked away, I had no idea who I was or what I was doing. And I met this woman. I was at a yoga retreat in Northern California, and this woman came up to me and she said, "Where's your Mars?" And I looked at her and I said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And she asked if I knew what time I was born. And I said, "Sure. I have a twin sister, so like our birth time is like something that we've always remembered." And so she said, "When you're done with yoga, come to my office. I want to talk to you." And I got to her office, and she said, "Someone told me that you were a football player. And if you're a football player, she said, it means you must have a strong Mars." And again, I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And so she put my birth information in her computer, and it pulled up a chart, and I had the most amazing 2 hour conversation with this woman. And I wouldn't say that after the conversation I was found, but she put me on track. She put me on track and kind of shoved me in the right direction. And from there I was able to figure it out.
What were in that 2 hour session? Where maybe if you want to elaborate, maybe not. Maybe it was too sacred. But what were some of those ahas that you received during that combo?
The biggest aha was she didn't know me from anything,
Sure.
but she pointed out that I likely had a tendency to gravitate towards excessively stressful situations.
It's like pulling you in those stressful situations. Like,
Well, when I say it like that, that's the response I often get. But if you think about it, professional sports, especially boxing, hockey, football, it's a celebration of stress. Our coaches would say we make practice hard so the games are easy.
sure.
And so the whole training is how to keep your wits, how to keep your mind about you in a stressful situation. So that quality made me a wonderful football player. But at that point in my life, I wasn't a football player anymore. And so I had to think of, okay, like, and also the type of stress. Football, I made a lot of money and all that stuff, but it destroyed my body, you know? And so that was the aha moment that up until this point, my life had been all about like wrecking shit, and I realized I was at a point where that's not sustainable. And I had to start living differently to start taking better care of myself.
Mm.
And I was at a yoga retreat, so I was on the right track, but I just went into this deep, deep journey of healing, and, and I mean like literal trauma. When you play football, especially the way that I played, you get layers of like physical trauma on the body. And the way that we grind and the way that men are taught not really to take care of themselves or even be aware of what's going on. So I had a year off, and in that year off, I got to peel layers of trauma off my body and off my mind, and I just had so much clarity coming back. I think when I tell people my first stint in the NFL was like, what do I have to do to myself to make this work? And the second stint was more about how can this opportunity of being a professional football player like help me accomplish and achieve my goals. And I think before I left, I didn't have any goals, so that question wouldn't have meant anything to me. But after having a year off and realizing, that I had something to do in the world, and how I could use football to help me accomplish those goals, and it's led me to where I am today.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. Looking at where you are now, when you first entered the league, you're probably like Mr. Football, Mr. Man, whatever. If you were to look,
Actually, I wasn't.
you weren't.
I wasn't. I was always good at football, but it didn't ever really define me, because the way I was raised, and the qualities of when you think of a professional football player, they weren't really like aligned, and so I was wrestling with that pretty much my whole football career, and when I had that year off, I got to listen to and take care of that other part of myself to have more balance in my life. When I entered the NFL, I had no idea. I had zero idea. I was just going along the path. And I think when you're young and you're really talented in something, like the talent kind of takes over. Like to the point where people don't even see you as a human being. They just see you as a phenom or someone that has a whole lot of talent. And I think the only thing I ever wanted since I was 4 years old was to be treated like a human being. And I thought football would do that, but it actually did the opposite.
Wow. No, I'm learning a lot here, and I'm getting a lot of different insights. And I've been on a journey. I don't know if I'd use the word similar, but I've been in business forever, and quite often when you're grinding and you're building businesses and you're in the entrepreneurial journey, you just don't have time to take care of that whole person paradigm.
Yeah.
Right? You sacrifice, your sleep, your body, your relationships, if you will. And it comes to a point where you ask yourself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, at what cost?
Yeah. That's what happened. That's exactly what happened. I had a moment where I asked myself, why am I doing this? And I didn't have a good answer. It's kind of scary, but it was an opening.
And then I'm sure you ask yourself that question often. Do you have a more
I'm
clear answer
clear. I'm
now?
100% clear on what I'm doing.
That's
There's
cool.
zero doubt in my mind
That's awesome.
what I'm here to do, and that's I think that's why it makes it easy to wake up joyful to attack and to hit it. You know, you mentioned entrepreneurship, and you know it's a word that's kind of thrown around, but when I thought about how do I like make a difference and give back, it was entrepreneurship. You know, I when I retired, I became curious about what does that word even mean, and so I started going around and interviewing entrepreneurs. And I was talking to this old guy in Texas, and he gave me my favorite answer. You know, he said, "See your problem and do something about it." And that made so much sense to me. And I think we're all sensitive because of our own experiences. We're all sensitive to where there are problems, you know? And there's personal problems, there's group problems, there's race problems, and then there's humanities problems. And I think we all have a sensitivity to those problems. And with that sensitivity, I believe comes a responsibility to do something about it. You know that feeling when you've gone through something difficult and deep down inside you have this feeling like, I want to make sure that no one ever has to go through something like this again.
Yeah, that's great. So, what do you mind sharing what your clarity is, what your why is, like what your purpose is?
It's this, right? This idea of live life by design. And a lot of times, if you say something like that to someone, they go blank because we're not really taught that there is a design. We are kind of taught that we are supposed to make a design or create a design. But if you look in nature, the patterns and the designs, they're already there. It's our job to recognize them and feel them or step into them.
What are some of the patterns that you've recognized in nature that we need to follow?
The developmental process, you know, is I see a lot of people beating themselves up, and I remind them, you know, at one point you couldn't even walk, you know, right? And if you see a toddler, right, they're trying to figure it out and they fall down, they don't say I'm so stupid, right? They don't beat themselves
Sure.
up. They just pop back up and keep on going. So I think the deepest pattern is the pattern of development or evolution, and that's a process of meeting something that you're not sure you can handle, tapping into inner resources, and finding a way to adapt.
I love it. You mentioned yoga. Maybe what's your definition of yoga? Why is yoga so, I'm assuming it's key for you.
It was at a point in my life. You know, people say yoga, it's words, right? People
Sure.
say yoga, they have different images. Like when I go into something, I try to go all the way to the core. So I was, you know, in a 3,000-year-old temple in India, you know, trying to really understand what is yoga. And honestly, living life by design, that's really the path, yoga, right? Yoga is the path is if you quiet all the crap, however, right? Whatever technique you use to quiet all the crap out there and you listen to that voice inside, it guides you or facilitates or pushes you towards your own design or your own path.
So it's quieting the mind, quieting the
It's quieting, it's not just quieting the mind, it's quieting the mind for a specific purpose. You know, it's like if there's so much static and we can't hear anything, then all we can pick up is the static, and that static manifests as our lives. But when you can quiet and you can hear peace, you can hear quiet, you can hear clarity, then that starts to manifest in someone's life.
That's beautiful. So somebody that wants to get more in tune with, you know, their spirit, their mindfulness, etc. What are some action items that we can take to start along that path?
Number one action item is ask yourself a question. All right, why am I here?
Why am I here?
Yeah, that has to be, because to me, if you don't have any clarity about why you're here, what is it like? What are we doing other than distracting ourselves from asking that question? So to me, and it's not a question you can ask and typically an answer comes right away. It's something you just got to like chew on, and because I find the questions I ask myself, it starts to determine the things that I notice. You know, if I'm asking myself, why does this suck so bad? Right? What I notice is how everything sucks. You know, and if I start to look at life through the lens of what am I here for, then I start to see where I contribute, and it starts to become obvious where I'm not contributing. And I believe that we're all here in a very general sense is to contribute something, right? We all have inner aptitudes that can be developed as talents that can be useful to other people than just ourselves.
So when you That's beautiful. So when you wake up in the morning, when you're ready to just go make the day happen, what are some of those thoughts that come into your mind to be able to keep that mission or that vision or that purpose
It's just
alive?
it's always there. It honestly, I mean, it's all that I think about. It's like whenever I have a free moment, I'm I'm contributing, I'm doing something, I'm building something. So it's a lifestyle. It really is. Like I'm not just talking, but I've asked myself that question so many times. What am I here for? It's just kind of the way that I see the world is always right. There's something that I can do. There's something that I can contribute in whatever space I am or whatever I'm doing. I'm always looking to do that.
Beautiful. Are you reading any books right now that you'd want to recommend or any previous readings that you'd want to share with us?
That's a good question. Honestly, for book recommendations, I like to talk to someone for a couple of minutes before I give them a book recommendation because the best advice is good advice, but it's not always good advice. Sometimes a coach would say hard work pays off, and no matter how hard you work, nothing pays off. And other times, a coach will say just believe in yourself and trust yourself, and it doesn't work. And other times, those things work perfectly. So this is kind of what I mean about patterns, and I think one of the patterns that's really deeply embedded in us is the pattern of a year, the seasons. And if you think about seasons, right, there's certain things that you do in spring, right, that you don't do in winter, right? Each season is a certain time for something, right? We plant, we plow, we harvest. And so if someone is taking good advice for planting in the winter, no matter how well they do it, it ain't going to work. Ain't nothing going to grow. So so I like to see where someone is at, what they're wrestling with, and usually an idea, a book, a quote, a saying, a movie, a song. I find movies and songs can be very, very powerful.
A movie that you might recommend. I know
Again, it
it's a tough
depends.
question.
Honestly, it depends on what someone is going through. Like one of the things my wife, she'll like if she's having a bad day or a great day, or she'll say, do you have any movie recommendations for me? And we'll have a 5-minute conversation, and then a movie
And then
will
a movie will pop up.
pop
That's
into
cool.
my head, and I'll be like, watch this one. There's been so many times in my life going through something and laying on the couch, flipping through, and I got sucked into a movie, and it gave me perspective.
That's cool.
It changed things for me.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about leadership and coaching here for a minute. Obviously, you've worked with a lot of different coaches, et cetera. Where you're sitting here today, maybe a coach or a mentor that you feel created a lot of value in your life, not just on the football field, but just in life in general.
Yeah, my good question. My college coach, John Makovic, he recruited me. He was at Texas, recruited me out of California, and he was a cerebral guy. Didn't really fit in Texas, but I loved him. And every day he would start the meeting with the quote, and to this day, right, at least two of the quotes still run in the back of my head all the time. The first one is you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. You never stay the same. Right? And that is a beautiful mantra, right? Whenever I'm like this and that runs in my head, it like pushes me in the direction of green and growing, right? This idea that we don't ever stay the same. And the other one, he would always say practice makes, and then everyone would say perfect, and he'd say no.
Permanent.
Practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I've heard that time and time again, and I completely agree with that one. And then as far as teams are concerned, what makes a great team a great team? I know that could be a really long answer.
Well, it's not. It's buy-in.
Buy-in.
Right. It comes to right because if you say what is it, what defines a team? To me, what defines a team is a common goal. And if everyone is bought into that common goal, that's what makes a team.
Was it tougher to create that common goal in the NFL than it was in college, or was it pretty similar?
Well, it's definitely tougher in the NFL because the common goal in college is why we all got a scholarship. Is why we're all there. But once you get a bunch of money and you are an adult, there's so many, and you're free, right? There's so many other things pulling at you, and so it takes more. I guess that's part of being, I think, becoming an adult or becoming more mature is things require more and more conscious choice. When we're young, when we're born, we can't do anything for ourselves, right? But as we grow, we have more agency.
No, beautiful. Do you see a lot of your former teammates that still have a hard time, being in that system like we talked about, where your 52 weeks are planned out, you know what's going on, when it's going on, how it's going on. You have a coach that's kind of the CEO of your life, if you will. Do you see a lot of your teammates still struggling with coming to and just creating that system, that structure, by not having it?
It's, definitely it's there. But I think the bigger thing is the shared goal. Is I think once, from the time we were 12, 13, the shared goal was to win football games. And then when football is over, what's the goal? What's the individual goal? What's the shared goal? And when you have patterns, right? Part of the way patterns are developed is things happen over and over and over again. And, for me, almost 25 years of doing the football thing over and over again, it created some really, really deep grooves. And I feel fortunate because I had that year when I retired, and I got to find myself more. And so it wasn't so much depending on the coach. I started to depend on myself more and give myself direction. Because the reality is, even the best coach isn't coaching you, doesn't know your heart, doesn't know who you truly are. And so I think what I've learned from all those coaches, I just made myself the coach of my own life, and I applied those same principles.
If you were to be coaching a team today, what are some of the main guiding principles you'd probably adhere to from the very get-go?
Know yourself and be yourself. Because the best thing that anyone can ever be is themselves. But it's a challenge to figure out who we actually are, because we've been told who we're supposed to be our whole life. And so it'd be a whole lot of deprogramming and reprogramming, And coaches say it, but their job's on the line, and there's a lot of stress. But I want the guys to be free, to feel liberated, because what I've found is the more someone consciously makes a choice of something that feels good to them, right, then they're all in. If they're making a choice because someone else says it's good, there's always going to be a part of their unconscious that's rebelling, it's holding out. And so, the first thing I'd say, the first day I was there, I'd say, talking to 100 guys, 80 scholarships, I'd say there's at least 15 of you guys that don't really want to be here, right? And I'd say, if you 15 stand up right now, I will honor your scholarships.
Wow. You've thought about this.
I have thought about it. I said, I'd honor your scholarship. I would honor your scholarships. Just be, the message I'm trying to send is like, all I want for all of you is for you to be the best you that you can be. And if you're not really all in, it's impossible for you to be the best you can be. And if you're not all in on this, there's something out there that you could be all in. How can I help you find that?
Wow. Yeah. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question for you. We opened up the show with talking about entrepreneurship. A lot of definitions out there. I love the definition that you gave that you learned in Texas, you said, which is find a problem, identify the problem, solve the problem. Yeah. That's what entrepreneurs do. And I always say, too, that being an entrepreneur is escaping 1,000 deaths. Like, you're thinking about quitting every day of the week. It's just par for the course because you're solving problems. Yeah. And the bigger the problem, the more important your entrepreneurial spirit is.
Amen to that.
So final advice that you'd want to end the podcast with in regards to entrepreneurship and how can we become better entrepreneurs?
It's funny. It comes back to the same thing of knowing yourself, because the more you know yourself, you get really clear on what you have to offer and what problems you are. Let
me ask you this: do a lot of humans have issues being themselves? Would you think?
I'd say a lot of people have issues even knowing what that means, right? Because when we say ourselves, it's like, what, like, I am me, and I think sometimes we forget that everything we've learned, someone taught us, right? Either the lens that we view the world through, someone gave us those glasses, And I think if you realize that, then it makes it easier to see clearly through the glasses. But when you think, this is the way things are, it's not the way things are. It's the way you were taught to see things.
Have you read the 4 Agreements?
I have. Mm-hmm.
So his son wrote the 5 levels of attachment. I recommend that book.
Okay.
Because it talks about what we just talked about.
Yeah.
That we have all these layers, all these attachments. You're Republican, you're Democrat, you're American, you're white, you're black, you're the teen or whatever, and then you're a dad, you're a mom, whatever, and we have all these attachments. And sometimes these attachments are so heavy that you don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Because these attachments are trying to tell you who you are.
I have an example, or this idea of who am I. One way I might describe who I am is fierce. Okay? And listening to what you said, whether I'm being, and this is something if I read the books about how to parent, you don't see a lot of books that tell you to be fierce as a parent. But if I try to be something other than fierce with my kids, right, they're not going to know who I am.
Sure.
Right? And so my kids, they know that I'm fierce, and it's something that we all laugh about, right? And it's something that they can receive because that's dad, and that's what I have to offer. If I was pretending or trying to be something else, right, it'd be a little confusing for them.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay. With that said, we have a show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
That was great.
It's awesome.